This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Daniel O'Brien, K-State grain economist, starts the show for today as he talks about market projections and how the grain market could react to future USDA reports. K-State Agriculture Precision Specialist Deepak Joshi keeps the show rolling as he highlights the use of remote sensing in agriculture. He mentions how he has used drones to support farmers. Concluding the show is K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond with his weather update, where he notes when Kansans can expect classic fall weather. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Friday show with a grain market update from K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien. Daniel, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Shelby.
Daniel, as we are in harvest for a couple of our crops, what are we seeing when we look at the market?
Well, we have a fair amount of volatility going on, even though you can still classify this as in harvest time, generally moderate to low price range. We had yesterday, for instance, for corn, D's corn actually was up 5 cents, closed up to 4.21 and 3/4. We've seen D's corn end up and had gotten to a low within the last 2-3 weeks, got down to about 4.10 or so, 4.09, 4.10, now up to 4.21. We had seen in latter September, early October as high as 4.30. So it seems like you could arguably say we're trading for D's corn futures during this harvest period in a range of about 4.10 to 4.30. We had in later August traded down as low as $3.90. So when you look at the closes yesterday, that 4.21 is just right in the middle of that range, and just interesting to watch. And when we look at the soybean market, soybeans overall closed yesterday at $10, 10 3/4 cents. It just depends whether that's optimistic or pessimistic, depends how far back you count. We had within the last 2 to 3 weeks gotten as low as about $9.95, $10 for lows. Prior to that, we were as high as in latter August, heading for September. We were at above 10.60, 10.50 thereabouts. So I don't think anybody would argue that harvest pressures are coming into play. We still have open questions for both of these commodities, for corn and soybeans, where the final yields will end up at. And when you look at discussions amongst farm analysts, there's generally the idea that instead of corn being 186.7 bushels per acre, as the USDA had said in their September 12th report, probably looking at on a yield basis more like 184 to 183 to 185 thereabouts. And I've put together some scenarios on that. All things unchanged, we end up at 184 instead of 186.7 bushels an acre. It probably makes anywhere from a 10, 15 cent up to 20 plus cent difference in the final USDA average projected price for the marketing year. We'll see. So then on the soybean side, we're still projecting 53.5 into some areas that have been pretty dry through the central and eastern corn belt. And so instead of 53.5 bushels an acre, there's still the idea that, again, nobody would be surprised if we ended up at 52 to 52.5 bushels an acre, something like that. That would bring tighter ending stocks also for soybeans. And if anything, there's probably more relative price responsiveness on the soybean market than there is for corn, just because if we tighten up on soybean ending stocks down to closer to 200 million bushels as opposed to just under 300 as to where we're at, well, that generally gets more attention to the market than we get if we take the ending stocks for corn of 2.3 billion thereabouts and take that down to, if that only goes down still 2 billion, well, you'll have some response, but the soybean situation looks like it's a lot tighter. So you got that happening. And then for wheat, we've been on this long-term downtrend. I wouldn't say it's uninterrupted because we still bounce around some around that trend. Closed yesterday though at $4.88 3/4 cents, below $5. And again, that's the futures price. basis levels for all three of these commodities have been, well, they've been reflecting large supplies. And if anything, probably in Kansas reflecting the need for storage space. We harvested a large hard red winter wheat crop primarily for us, and brought that into whatever storage we had commercially on farm. Well, now we also have large corn and grain sorghum and soybean crops coming on generally in most areas of the state are scrambling for storage. When you start looking around to see, well, what's giving, it does sound like we're moving quite a bit of hard red winter wheat into export sectors. At least those are the records we had until the government shutdown, kind of cut off the export reporting. I guess I'd hypothesize that in order to have storage space for the coming fall harvested crops, we've been pretty aggressive in moving wheat into export channels. So we'll see where that goes. I would add also for cash prices and basis levels, in the notes we put out on Ag Manager each week, we have charts for grain basis levels at 6 different parts of the state: Northwest, North Central, Northeast, Southeast, South Central, and Southwest, and to a location that you see much wider basis levels for corn, especially for sorghum, for wheat as well, and pretty much for soybeans all across the board, just showing again, that's the supply-demand balances in all these areas are definitely tipping towards large supplies and wider balances. So at the elevator levels where we're looking at at what bids we get, we've got pretty wide local basis, weakening cash prices, et cetera. Now, I note in the last couple of days, there's, guess what we'd expect to see in an expected large crop situation like this, more attention on usage. Looks like we have some pretty good ethanol usage. Again, we have some low prices helping exports for some of these crops, corn, wheat in particular. So we do have some of that going on. And again, we just got the quarterly stocks numbers to give us an idea of how much feed use we've been having. So in general, the usage side surely favored these crop years, I guess, given lower prices and generally decent demand. And we still have issues waiting out there to be dealt with. Still the U.S.-China trade negotiations, and fingers crossed, lots of hope that the resolution of that, once it comes around, would help grain sorghum and soybean exports down the road. If that were to come in, especially on the grain sorghum side, it'd be, let's just say it'd be greatly welcomed and could help us to see some improvement, especially in the sorghum basis going forward.
Daniel, while you look at the grain market, do you feel like they're wanting a sense of more information or direction?
Yeah, I don't want to use just hyperbole here, but without the USDA hard data, it's not that we're flying blind, but we're just kind of guesstimating to a degree, relying on whatever we can pull together for usage, especially on the export side. And if we don't see a resolution to the USDA, U.S. government shutdown next week, then you have to think that the crop measurement activities of the USDA NASS probably are at risk for, well, the upcoming November 1st time period. You know, if the WASDE report's supposed to come out on November the 10th, which is the next one scheduled, we'd have to have activities going on to measure the size of crops out in the fields around November 1st, plus or minus 1 or 2 days, and some time to prepare for that. So really, we're sitting here on the 17th. If by the 24th, 25th, 26th, there's not a resolution to the government impasse, then you have to start really asking serious questions about whether we'll have the November report. And I think, Shelby, just up the ante for potential market volatility that could happen once we do find out what the supply demand numbers are in these major grains. And again, it's just gonna make for exciting times, and with the potential for prices to go either higher or lower based on what yields are, literally, for corn, for soybeans in particular, sorghum also at play there. So I guess during this time, what we're looking for is just the movement in the markets. You know, what do they tell us in terms of what they think is out there and where prices might be going?
Where we didn't have an October report and we don't know if we're going to have a November report, does that mean when we do get a report, we could see it have a big impact on the market?
Yeah, and instead of, typically we sort of find out more information, we sort of ease into changes for the most part. From the September numbers, well, we see what early harvest reports are coming into October. By the time we get then to the November timeframe that a lot of harvest would have been done. We're still gathering information, et cetera. But if this year, if we don't have, well, we didn't have October, if we don't have November, then the USDA would be in a position that they could come in during December when they don't normally bring USDA NASA production data in. They could decide in extraordinary circumstance to have the December report be the bellwether for when all that data comes out. But if they don't do that, then it all goes back and we drop it all into January and we just hold on to our hats and see where in the world things go. It's just a lot of potential for shocks to the market and volatility that could take us either way if that happens.
Is the market then just following trends from past years of what usually happens, or how are they making those decisions?
Well, I think the market right now, the grain markets are very comfortable with the idea that, hey, we know we have large crops. It's just a matter of how large they are. So if we were in a tighter market supply demand situation where stocks weren't so plentiful for corn, for these other crops, then we'd have a lot more volatility going on. Right now, it's kind of hard to miss too far from what the final outcome will be, just because we don't have a drought. And now one thing we haven't mentioned, and it is October, is that we also haven't had a freeze either, and probably too late to affect a lot of crops. But the lack of a freeze could continue to delay harvest, especially for late maturing crops, grain sorghum in Kansas, maybe some corn, beans in some places. So it'd be interesting to hear what our colleague Chip Redmond talks about with regard to when final killing frosts will come about, and it won't be that much longer that if we don't get those killing frosts, then it'll delay harvests and just add another factor of uncertainty to what we're trying to work our way through.
Daniel, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you, Shelby. Take care.
That was K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing remote sensing with K-State Precision Agriculture Specialist Deepak Joshi. Deepak, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Selby, for inviting me here.
Deepak, as we're thinking about remote sensing and talking about it today, what is it?
Thank you, Selby. Yeah, remote sensing actually means it consists of the two words, remote and sensing. Remote means from far away, and sensing means collecting data or collecting image. So in simple word, remote sensing means to study about our crop, our soil, or any surrounding environment using some sensor-based technology, which you fly from the far away and without touching that object. So collecting information without touching any object is called remote sensing. The best example is drone-based remote sensing is one of the best example that we use a lot, and also the satellite-based remote sensing. And also sometimes we use a different handhold sensor as well, or sometimes some camera in our tractor or our equipment as well. So all these sensor and the camera, they collect the information about our crop, about our soil, and from the far away, and they give us a different information that can help us to make a different decision in our farm.
And when we're thinking about agriculture, what are some key pieces of information you often see remote sensing being used for?
I've been using a remote sensing a lot here in Kansas. So usually for the on-farm monitoring, scouting. For example, I fly farmer field, like big field, like 100 acre, 150 acre, to scout the field for a different field variability. Like I want to see, using a drone-based remote sensing, to understand how crop are growing within the field, how the soil nutrient and or soil moisture is within the field. So within a field as well, we have a lot of variability. So using these remote sensing tool, we can understand what kind of variability we have. So also I've been using that for the different other purpose, like weed detection. So it can help us to identify the weeds in the field, and based on the identification, we can make the weed map as well using the drone. Otherwise, it's almost impossible to walk into the field and manually identifying those weeds in the field. If you have like 150 acre, it almost will take you a whole day to walk around and finding those weeds. And also we can use for some other purpose as well, like a nutrient, identifying nutrient stress or water stress. Those can be easily identified with a drone, which is almost impossible if we want to identify with our naked eye. So there are a lot of applications of the remote sensing in the agriculture.
Do you see a lot of use when we think about crop farmers, but also in pastures with livestock?
Yeah, definitely in the livestock and pasture as well, a lot of application. For example, as I mentioned, identifying the weeds in the pasture land is a big challenge right now. And I've been helping farmer to make the weed map and identify the Sericea weed in the pasture land. And based on that, we can create the weed map. And based on this weed map, we can do the target application to control those weed as well. And also there are some other application as well, like we can use a different thermal sensor on the livestock side, and that can help to measure the body temperature of the livestock, and also that can be helped to detect the disease in the livestock animals as well. So there are a lot of applications both in the crop side as well as in the livestock side.
Is most of this being done while flying a drone?
Yeah, actually, we fly a drone at a different time, depending on what's our objective. For example, for the crop side, if I want to count seed germination, I will fly after 2 weeks after planting. Actually, at that time, it will be easy to detect and count those seed. And if I want to detect the nutrient deficiency or soil moisture, maybe I'll fly again that field after 1 month of the planting. Actually, so it depends on our objective and what we want to do. So we can fly a drone at a different time and get the information.
Deepak, we've been focused a little bit more towards drones, but you also mentioned satellites as an option when we think about remote sensing. And so, what information can be received from satellites?
Satellite as well, they are getting so popular, and they have a lot of advantage as well, because to fly drone, you need to have the drone, you need to have the drone pilot license, and you have to process all those images. But now satellite, they are available free of cost. They are ready to use as well. And for example, Sentinel and Landsat are freely available satellite. They provide images. The only difference is the resolution is slightly different. For a drone, you can get the very high resolution. You can see very small thing as well from the drone image. But with the satellite, it doesn't give that high resolution compared to the drone. But they give a larger area image actually. So, but that's not possible with a drone. So satellite can cover whole Earth, but drone doesn't cover that big area. So there is always a balance about using satellite and a drone. But definitely satellite also have a lot of application in our agriculture.
What about the use of a handheld sensor?
There are some handheld sensor as well, like for example, grain seeker, and you can use that to identify the nitrogen deficiency in your crop. So you can just use those are easy to use, and you can just put those on the leaf of the crop, and you will see what's your NDVI measurement that you can correlate with the nitrogen content of the crop. Actually, if it's a low NDVI, that means your crop have a less nitrogen, so you will need to apply the nitrogen fertilizer. So those also can be used for different decisions.
You mentioned resolution, and when you say resolution, what do you mean?
Resolution is important. So depending on our objective, we can use a different type of the resolution. For example, resolution means spatial resolution. So that means how clearly you can see in the image. For example, if you have a very small pixel size, usually drone have a high resolution image compared to the satellite. On drone, that's why you can see the small thing. So you can count the plant as well, but you cannot count the plant using the satellite image. But with the drone image, you can easily count the plant. You can easily see the weed, and you can detect those weed as well. So spatial resolution means how easily you can distinguish the different object on the ground using that image. So we need a small pixel size. So that means high spatial resolution. So, and another resolution is spectral. So that means how many different color that sensor can detect. For example, the best example is a human eye. Human eye can only detect three colors, red, green, and blue, so which is called visible light. But drone sensor, they can detect those three as well as some invisible light as well. So that's why they have a high spectral resolution compared to the human eye or the camera we have in our phone as well. So that's another example. So another is a temporal resolution. It means just a temporal resolution means how often we can get the images. For example, drone is an on-demand base, so we can fly anytime we want. So it always have a flexibility on the resolution, temporal resolution. But on the satellite, they give you the data at a fixed time interval. So their temporal resolution is fixed. Like a Landsat give you every 8 days. Sentinel will give you every 5 days. So that also is important resolution. And another is a radiometric resolution. It's just a radiometric. It's just like a how easily we can distinguish the different color in the image. The best example is comparing the black and white TV and color TV. So black and white TV have a low radiometric resolution, and you cannot distinguish so many things. But with a color TV, you can distinguish so many things very more clearly. So color TV have a higher radiometric resolution. So there are different resolutions, and based on our objective, we can use a different type of these resolution as well.
And focusing in on drones just here as we round out today's interview, Deepak, what would you like farmers to know about drones, and if there's something they're thinking about that might be beneficial for their operation?
Yeah, drone technology now is emerging, and there is a huge application in the agriculture in our farm as well, from scouting, plant count, weed detection, and different nutrient and water stress detections, and there are a lot of applications. So I think there is a more huge potential in our farm. So we should use these technologies. It will save the time. Otherwise, walking into the field will take you a whole day. But just with a drone, it will give you information in 30 minutes actually. So it save a lot of time. So it's a new technology we should use in our farm actually.
Deepak, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
All right. Thank you so much, Selvi. Thank you for inviting.
That was K-State Precision Agriculture Specialist Deepak Joshi. If you'd like to read more on this topic, there are 2 Agronomy e-update articles titled The Basics of Remote Sensing in Precision Agriculture and Understanding Resolution in Remote Sensing Imagery, What Farmers Need to Know. I will link them in today's show notes on agtoday.net. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Friday show with a weather update from K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. Chip, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Chip, has any place in Kansas seen its first frost for this season?
We are still looking for it. We continue to have just insanely warm temperatures in the mid 60s to start out the day. And that's 20 degrees above normal. Our high temperatures have been in the upper 80s to near 90 degrees in the afternoon. And again, average high temperatures are supposed to be right around that 70 degree mark, a little bit warmer in the west, the lower 70s. Really ridiculous warm continues. The average first frost is somewhere in that mid to late September range for northwest Kansas. And the first freeze is early October. And then the last freeze in the state is in the far southeast, obviously later, typically later. And that's not until the beginning of November. So right now, the first freeze should be somewhere in the central part of the state, kind of between those two. And we haven't had any. We've got 139 degree reading so far in the state. And other than that, everyone has been in the 40s twice so far this fall, which is much less than what we'd expect, with average lows already near that 40 degree mark.
And while we've been seeing warmer temperatures, have we also continued to see moisture?
Yeah, one of the reasons we keep seeing temperatures so warm, especially at night, is the amount of moisture in the air, the amount of humidity. And we keep getting this kind of southwest flow that keeps funneling in moisture from the Gulf and from the East Pacific. But the actual precipitation is mostly trending to our north and west. Colorado goes to New Mexico, Arizona, through Colorado, then up into Nebraska and the Dakotas and around. And so that's keeping us really warm. We're under impact of the high pressure that's really centered off to our south and east into Texas and Louisiana. And we're starting to see drier conditions emerge because the lack of precipitation, but we've still had a lot of humidity in the air. We did have some precipitation this week. We had rainfall anywhere from maximum to a half inch in a couple isolated areas in Ottawa County and in Marion County. And other than that, most folks only saw maybe a tenth or two and get into far west Kansas, barely a hundredth or two. And same with the far east Kansas, barely a hundredth or so. But overall, we're not seeing these big frontal systems, so we're not getting the really strong winds that we would expect for fall. Fall is the second windiest time of the year. So all of it's playing together for definitely a warmer fall. And when we look at it temperature-wise for the state, we're running record warmest October so far. We still have a lot of October to go. And precipitation-wise, definitely starting to transition to the drier side with below-average precipitation.
Are we going to get to feel that classic cool fall weather when we look ahead?
I think things are about to change. We're going to have a cold front come through Friday evening into Saturday morning. That's going to get some showers and storms along. Again, scattered in variety. You don't expect anything widespread. And then more of a potent storm system pushes through Saturday through Sunday. That brings another cold front that brings likely a severe weather outbreak for folks in Missouri and eastward. I think far east Kansas might get into that moisture a little bit, where they might see some areas of quarter to a half inch rain they really, really need. If anyone needs it in the state, that area needs it the most, where they have D1 drought. But that'll bring in cooler air to start next week. I think we'll once with the 40s, maybe even see a couple more 30s emerge Sunday morning. And then, again, a couple mornings will be cooler next week, with our highs only getting to about 70 degrees. And then our lows still struggling to get below upper 40s. So we're still going to be above normal next week, but temperature is definitely on the cooler side. And then as you get further out into later next week, so uncertainty on what's going to really emerge with the pattern. Some of the models say another surge of moisture is going to kick up into another system next weekend that might bring more widespread rain, but most of the models are saying that's a bit outlandish, and they have things continue to be drier and warmer than normal really through the end of the month. And I think that's probably the most likely outcome at this point. We're starting to emerge some negative feedback from these drought conditions to our east, and we're likely going to favor drier than normal and warmer than normal for the rest of October.
Chip, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
That was K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. That's all we have for you today on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you on Monday.